Finding a comfortable seated position. Maybe you lean against something today. Right? In the studio, maybe you felt that you had to sit away from the wall, but maybe here you sit against something. Maybe you let something hold you up. Maybe you have your legs long in front of you or out to the side. I'd like to chant the Gayatri mantra for you, maybe even with you. One of the definitions or translations of this that I love. I can't hear you. Can you say that again? One of the definitions that I love is the eternal earth, air, heaven, that glory, that resplendence of the sun. May we contemplate the brilliance of that light. May the sun inspire our minds. So let's all take a long, slow breath in. Exhale, sigh. Notice where your hands are. And let your hands find something to rest on. Your thighs, your knees. Palms can be down, feeling the legs that brought you here, or up, ready to receive or let go. Maybe you sit up a little taller and then let the shoulders soften. If you've just joined, if you can mute your computer, that would be great. It's a little microphone button on the lower part of your screen. So we'll do this call and response once, and then 2 times together. Om Bhur-Bhuva Swaha. Om Bhur-Bhuva Swaha. Tatsavituvvarenyam. Tatsavituvvarenyam. Bhargo devasya dhimahhi. Bhargo devasya dhimahhi. Dhiyo yo na prachodaya. Dhiyo yo na prachodaya. Together. Om Bhur-Bhuva Swaha. Tatsavituvvarenyam. Bhargo devasya dhimahhi. Dhiyo yo na prachodaya. Om Bhur-Bhuva Swaha. Tatsavituvvarenyam. Bhargo devasya dhimahhi. Dhiyo yo na prachodaya. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Take your shoulders, rub them up, back, and down, forward, up, and down, out of the way. Wiggle your wrists, wiggle your fingers. Bring your hands together in front of your heart, lift your heart and bow your head. Chanting has that experience of breathing together, making sound together. Chanting the sound of Om can offer that same quality. It brings you right into the moment. So I invite you to chant, hum, or listen to the sound of Om 3 times as we move into practice today. Let the shoulders soften down away from the ears. Let the thighs relax out to the side. Let the ground hold you here. Let's inhale together. Release your hands down, palms up. Let the elbows soften away from the shoulders. You can leave the eyes closed or open them and have a gentle gaze forward and down in front of you. I'd like to offer an opportunity to practice a breath, a kriya, called square breath. Square breath is inhaling for 4, pausing for 4, exhaling for 4, and pausing for 4. You practice, as you might guess, 4 rounds. I'd like to offer 1 round of that here as an opportunity to experience perhaps what pausing of the breath feels like. Pausing or holding the breath is not recommended if you are pregnant, if you have uncontrolled high blood pressure, and if it makes you feel really scared or anxious. Trust that your body knows how to breathe, and if you feel any of those anxiety or fearful feelings, respect it for now. I offer this now so that later on in one of the poses, we have the opportunity to practice it together 4 times again. So 1 round. Breathe in normally, inhale, and exhale. Feel the shoulders soften. Inhale for 1, 2, 3, 4. Pause, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. And pause, 2, 3, 4. Breathe naturally. Notice the sweetness of perhaps the relief of breathing in your natural pattern again. It can be good to upset our natural patterns. It can be good to lean into something a little different. Maybe climbing a hill, we feel that vigorous breath. Maybe pausing and holding, we notice what happens in the stillness and the silence. Come up off of whatever you're sitting upon and make your way up into a heart bench. If you have 2 blocks with you, you can place 1 block on the medium height and 1 block on the tall height. The tall block receives the back of your head. The medium height block receives the back of your heart. If you don't have blocks with you, you can roll up blankets that you have, or you can even use couch cushions or pillows. The idea is that you lift the heart and have the chin lightly tucked in. So it could be 2 couch cushions. You could roll up blankets like a Tootsie Roll. Either way, you come into it the same way with the knees bent, coming to lay down. Feeling yourself recline, you decide how much you lift the head or relax the head. Let the arms come down beside you, and you could lengthen the legs here. You could keep the knees bent and have the feet out to the side here. You could gently let the knees open away. Sometimes this is starting to feel good, but is too much. If it's too much, you could bring blankets and put them right underneath your thighs or your knees so that the opening that's happening in your groins is one that the breath still flows in. What relaxes your shoulders more, palms up or palms down? The space is all yours, so the arms can be far away or close in. I think there is a quality of relaxing across the top of the shoulders if there's softness in the inner elbows. So that may inform where you choose to place the arms. Let's take a long, slow breath in through the nose. Open your mouth and sigh. Stay here in this heart bench feeling, the front of the chest lifting and maybe inviting the shoulder knobs to drop away and down. Feel whatever sensation you feel across the ankles and knees and thighs, but let the ground hold your feet and your bottom and your hips. I'm going to demonstrate the shapes today and then come up and read to you from Pema Chodron's book. We started with the first chapter in Living Beautifully last week, but we didn't finish the chapter. In the chapter, Pema talked about information from Jill Bolt Taylor's My Stroke of Insight. Talked about how emotions, feelings, sensations last about 90 seconds if we leave them be. She also spoke about how so much of our suffering comes from being uncomfortable with or fighting change. One of the ways that we are worried about or fight change is because we feel it impacts our who we are, what Pema likes to call ego or fixed identity. It's been a very interesting experience for me, moving from teaching mostly full-time to parenting and homeschooling full-time. Maybe you're also feeling that experience of who you are based on what you did and now what you do. Yoga invites us to go beneath the doing and to connect with this wisdom and kindness, this compassion that is who we are. We do different things with our abilities, but they are not who we are. Pema says ego or fixed identity doesn't just mean we have a fixed idea about ourselves. It also means we have a fixed idea about everything we perceive. I have a fixed idea about you. You have a fixed idea about me. And once there is that feeling of separation, it gives rise to very strong emotions. In Buddhism, strong emotions like anger, craving, pride, and jealousy are known as kleshas, conflicting emotions that cloud the mind. In yoga, we say kleshas are the obstacles to happiness. The kleshas are our vehicle for escaping groundlessness. And therefore, every time we give in to them, our pre-existing habits are reinforced. Groundlessness is what Pema says we feel when there is uncertainty or change. We feel how much things are in process, in flux, and we come face to face, skin to skin, heart to heart, head to head, thought to thought, with how out of control we are and how much control we don't have over the people around us, the situations around us. So the kleshas are our vehicles for escaping groundlessness, anger, craving, pride, and jealousy. In Buddhism, going around and around, recycling the same patterns is called samsara. And samsara equals pain. We keep trying to get away from the fundamental ambiguity of being human, and we can't. We can't escape it any more than we can escape change, any more than we can escape death. The cause of our suffering is our reaction to the reality of no escape. Ego clinging and all the trouble that stems from it. All the things that make it difficult for us to be comfortable in our own skin and get along with one another. If the way to deal with those feelings is to stay present with them without fueling the storyline, then it begs the question, how? How do we get in touch with the fundamental ambiguity of being human in the first place? In fact, Pema says it might not be all that difficult because the underlying uneasiness is usually present in our lives. It's pretty easy to recognize, but not easy to interrupt. We may experience this uneasiness as anything from slight edginess to sheer terror. Anxiety makes us feel vulnerable, which we generally don't like. Vulnerability comes in many guises. We may feel off balance, as if we don't know what's going on, don't have a handle on things. We may feel lonely or depressed or angry. Most of us want to avoid emotions that make us feel vulnerable, so we'll do almost anything to get away from them. But instead of thinking about these feelings as bad, we could think of them as road signs, barometers that tell us that we're in touch with groundlessness, that we would see these feelings for what they really are, a gateway to liberation. An open doorway to freedom from suffering, the path to our deepest well-being and joy. We have a choice. We can spend our whole life suffering because we don't know how to relax with things as they are, or we can learn to touch, to lean in. We can learn to relax and embrace the open-endedness of the human situation, which is fresh, unfixated, and unbiased. So the challenge is to notice. Maybe you notice the opening across your chest or the armpits and you relax with it. Maybe you notice the stretch deep in the groins across the thighs and you exhale, exhale, exhale. We notice the emotional tug. We notice the shenpa, that I want to be anywhere but here feeling when it arises, and we stay with it for 1, minutes without the storyline, without the why, without blaming, without criticizing our own experience of feeling that we want to be somewhere else and somehow different. Can you do this once a day? That's where we start. We do it once. And we see how it works for us. We notice if we find that in connecting with that feeling of not wanting to be here, of uneasiness or fear or anger or jealousy, we notice in really feeling it and letting it be a freedom. A freedom of responsibility, of need, of should to change something. We pause and breathe for 90 seconds. And then we can connect with what Pema talks about freedom. The freedom from suffering that we can practice once a day, once in a while. These habits that we build, like the push-up challenge, like the plank challenge, we do a little bit. We find out how it feels for us. We see the reaction, the response, the results, and then that momentum will carry us. We may find that we would like more of that freedom. We may find moments to practice it more than once a day. Pema says this is the process of unmasking, letting go, opening the mind and the heart. Let's inhale together here. Exhale to sigh. Bring your arms closer in. Let your palms feel the surface you're practicing on, your blanket, your beach blanket, your floor. And then bring your knees up. So you may take the hands to the thighs and lift the legs up. Feel the feet on the ground about hips width distance apart. Palms, elbows, wrists on the ground. Press down to lift up, look at your knees. You can roll over to the right side and come up to sit, or you can press yourself all the way up to sit. Let your feet be a little further away from your bottom. So you can do that by moving your feet forward or your bottom back, and then bring your belly towards your thighs, your shoulders towards your knees, and your chin towards your chest. Where do your arms want to go? Do they want to come forward on your shins, bend elbows, have them be out to the side? Maybe they want to drip down beside you. Inhaling and exhaling. Bring your hands back, start to press yourself up to sit. Lean to the side and move whatever you've brought behind you on your mat off to the side. And then sit down with your legs long. I have a blanket on top of a mat on top of the carpet. If you're on a harder surface, you may want to sit on the edge of something. Sitting on the edge of something does two things for you. It softens the surface underneath your bottom, which might allow you to sit up. But if you sit all the way back, you lose the opportunity for the hips to kind of come forward. So if you sit on the edge of something, wiggle forward so you feel your hip points move forward. Bend your left knee, open it out to the side. Don't have that foot touching the thigh. Let the left foot and right thigh have some space between them. You could have this knee on a blanket or a pillow. If having the knee out to the side, this is external rotation of this thigh bone, you could have the top of the foot beside you and lean forward and down. My hip said no, thank you. Relax the right foot, and you're going to bring the chin to the chest and round forward. You can hang here with the arms on the ground. Certainly your hands touch the ground here. But what would happen if you brought books or blocks so that the inner elbows were soft, so the shoulders rounded forward more? You might start to feel a nice welcome stretch across the low back. You could also, if you've got books or blocks, make a tower and rest the arms and head here this way. Some people love feeling of space underneath, between the belly and the thighs. Some people love to feel connection. So you might find that putting a blanket or a pillow here allows you to soften something more and feel more stretch, certainly in the back of this right leg. Maybe you notice it in the left hip. Maybe you hold the head with the hands. It could be really nice to feel that contact. If you feel a big opening across the back of this knee on the long leg, then I'd put something under it. You could roll up a blanket, or it could be something small like a scarf or a sock. And if you have an extra blanket or a scarf, you might find that just a little bit of weight across the shoulders or the head invites a softening down that wasn't available without it. Let's take a long, slow breath in. Exhale to sigh. Staying here in this pose we call half butterfly. Certainly, if the breath stops and the teeth clench at any point during practice, know that you could move your way out of that shape. You could also add an extra blanket or block or height somewhere so that the stretch isn't so deep. Yin yoga stretches the fascia, the connective tissue. It gently builds up pressure on one side and opens up something else. In moments where you feel yourself moving into a discussion about the sensation in your body, maybe you could travel throughout the whole body and find all the sensations, not just the closing in and the tight or the deep stretch that is uncomfortable, but maybe you could find that the shoulders soften in some way in the shape, or the space between the eyebrows relaxes. Let's breathe in here and breathe out. The second chapter is called Life Without the Storyline. And I think it's really hard. Emma starts off by writing, my granddaughter's university professor asked her students to leave their cell phones behind when they came to class. My granddaughter was amazed at how much more present and alert she was as a result. She observed that her whole generation was getting in-depth, intensive training in being distracted. To me, this underscores how important it is for her generation, the generations that follow, and the generations that came before, to counter this trend, she says, by getting intensive training in staying present. When you practice staying present, one thing you'll quickly discover is how persistent the storyline is. Traditionally, in the Buddhist texts, our tendencies with the habitual storylines are described as seeds in the unconsciousness. When the right causes and conditions come together, these pre-existing propensities pop like flowers into the springtime. It's helpful to contemplate that it's these propensities and not what triggers them that are the real cause of our suffering. One of the Wake Up Yoga teachers, Khalif, described training with someone or listening to someone once as letting them plant seeds in your garden. And I love that idea. Who are you allowing to plant seeds in your garden? What seeds are you watering and putting in the sunshine in your garden? When we notice these things, we could move a different plant into the sun. We could breathe and water something else. Oftentimes, the things that mess with our ego identity, that mess with our feeling of security and groundlessness are big. Maybe we start with seeds and water and sunshine and breath. We could say small. Maybe we start with something tangible and understandable and trust the unfolding. Just a few more breaths here in this half butterfly. And start to press your hands into something. Let the elbows be soft. Let the head just dangle. And use your arms to roll back behind you. So low back moves back, then the middle back, then the shoulders, and then the head. Lift the left knee, extend that leg long. Circle the ankles, maybe wiggle the toes, maybe shrug the shoulders. Then we'll bend the right knee, move that out to the side. Again, space between the sole of the right foot and the left. Seeing how this side is. Maybe these toes roll out or roll in differently from the other. Maybe it feels easier to relax this right thigh down. Maybe it's more challenging. So feel and hear the sensations. And then use the props so that you can sit down here. Again, there's an option to put the top of the right foot to the blanket or floor beside you and have the knee point forward. Tuck the chin in so it's rounding in the shoulders and lean forward and down over this long left leg. Draw your props in so that your inner elbows are soft, so your shoulders stay soft. That can be where having the blanket or the scarf over the back of the neck or the shoulders can be really lovely. You might need to wiggle that left foot side to side to relax it again. The muscles do amazing things to move the body. And then you can invite them to soften. Breathing in, breathing out. Feel what's underneath you. See if maybe the right side of the seat and the left side of the seat can be a little even. There's something so wonderfully naturally competitive about humans. I say lean forward. Do you lean forward until you feel a stretch? Do you lean forward seeking something as validation that you are doing it correctly, that you are being right and good here? There is something in us that are amazing discoverers and travelers. We see new things, we want to go there and get closer or taste it. Do you feel this need for your forehead to touch your leg? These are things we can notice about ourselves. We can notice the patterns. So life without the storyline, part of it is putting things down, and part of it is noticing what we are choosing to think about right now. Emma says, I had a dream about my ex-husband. I was just settling down for a quiet evening at home when he arrived with 6 unknown guests and then disappeared, leaving me to take care of them, and I was furious. When I woke up, I thought ruefully, so much for being done with anger. I guess the propensity is still there. Then she says, I started to think about an incident that had occurred the previous day, and I began to get furious all over again. And this completely stopped me in my tracks. I realized that waking or sleeping, it's just the same. It isn't the content of our movie that needs our attention, it's the projector. It isn't the current storyline that's the root of our pain, it's our propensity to be bothered in the first place. The propensity to feel sorry for ourselves, jealous, angry, habitual, all too familiar emotional responses are like seeds that we keep watering and nurturing. But every time we pause and stay present with the underlying energy, we stop reinforcing those propensities and begin to open ourselves to refreshingly new possibilities. As you respond differently to an old habit, you may start to notice changes. In the past, when you got angry, it might have taken you 3 days to cool down. But if you keep interrupting the angry thoughts, you may get to the point at which it only takes a day to drop the anger. Eventually, only hours, she says, or even 1.5 minutes. You're starting to be liberated from suffering. It's important to realize that interrupting thoughts isn't the same as repressing them. It's really important to notice that interrupting the thoughts isn't the same as repressing them. Repression is denial of what's happening, which only sends the thoughts underground where they can fester. At the same time, we don't want to keep chasing after the thoughts and getting hooked by them. So interrupting is a pause. Interrupting thoughts is somewhere between clinging to them and pushing them away. It's a way of allowing the thoughts to come and to go, to rise and to pass, to not be such a big deal. The practice is to train in not following the thoughts, not getting rid of thoughts altogether, That would be impossible. You may have thought-free moments, and as your meditation or yin yoga or restorative practice deepens, longer expanses of time that are thought-free, but thoughts always come back. That's the nature of the mind. You don't have to make the thoughts the villain, though. You can just train in interrupting their momentum. The basic instruction is to let the thoughts go or to label them thinking and stay with the immediacy of your experience. That thinking labeling is something I heard when receiving instruction on sitting meditation. Maybe if what you're feeling is not on the meditation cushion, but out in the world and all the doing that you are participating in, maybe you label the thoughts or say what it is. I'm really annoyed right now with the way so-and-so is something. I am feeling anger. I want to be anywhere but here right now, and I am here. With my butt on the seat, with my feet on the floor, I remember that I can breathe. A couple more inhales and exhales here. Hands on something that's not your legs. Feel that connection with the ground and start to roll backwards. So roll the bottom more down onto the seat, the low back behind you, the ribs come over the hips, the shoulders lift, and then lift the head. Take the time. Go on the journey. Release your right leg long. Close your eyes. Notice the difference between the legs, the knees, the ankles. Does one feel more this? More warm, more open. They're both good. So I'd like to invite you to practice frog pose now. I'm going to demonstrate a couple variations on frog pose and then an alternative practice if that doesn't work in your body today. So frog pose is kind of like a wide-legged child's pose. So my big toes are touching right now, my knees are apart, and then we lean forward and down. One of the best things about practicing at home is that I've been able to use a whole thin bed pillow to sit upon for this pose. So notice if the top of your ankles feels too much opening here, put a scarf underneath it, a gentle amount until it is the right amount for you. If the knees are bothering you here, bring a blanket or a pillow all the way up underneath. It's like a whole new set of knees for me. If you're feeling pressure in the front of your knees, pad up here. Just know that the higher the knees go, the deeper you might sit down and pay attention to how the breath is flowing. The knees can be this far apart. Your heels, some people find knee relief by bringing the heels out. I'll demonstrate really briefly in line with the knees. That tweaks my knee so I don't do it, but maybe that's what allows your knee to feel great, then do it. And then the shape is to come down. So you could be here with a book or a block under the head. Blocks are so hard. You may love that contact, that firmness. I have found myself to be all about the blanket these days, all about the pillow. So you may have a curve in your low back the way I do. You may have this long line. Notice how my head is lifted here. I think that will eventually bother my neck. So I'm going to take the block away. Chin can be nestled into your neck. You can look to the right. You can look to the left. You might love to have a pillow just under the top of the head so there's space underneath your face. If frog pose is not working in your body today, you could sit on the edge of a blanket. You could have a nice big tower of pillows and blankets to come up to you and lean forward and make that connection here. So frog pose or a wide-legged forward fold. Take a long, slow breath in and release it out. Frog pose opens the groins again, kind of like the heart bench perhaps if you chose the legs out to the side option. Frog pose could invite the shoulders to soften down. We can come with stiffness and tightness from all of this that we are doing, protecting and watching things in front of us. And we may yearn to stretch out, to release, to find openness, but sometimes the soothing happens in even more folding forward so that the front body can relax. And then later on in other poses or shapes, it can open up. So instead of reaching for a big stretch, see what you can soften into here. So the basic instruction is to let the thoughts go or to label them thinking and stay with the immediacy of your experience. Everything in you will want to do the habitual thing, will want to pursue the storyline. The storyline is associated with certainty and comfort. It bolsters your very limited static sense of self and holds out the promise of safety and happiness. But the promise is a false one. Any happiness it brings is only temporary. The more you practice not escaping into the fantasy world of your thoughts and instead contacting the felt sense of groundlessness, the more accustomed you'll become to experience emotions as simply sensation, free of concept, free of storyline, free of fixed ideas of bad and good. So you can relax your belly here, inviting the breath to flow deeply. Maybe that allows you to sink down and soften the thighs more. Maybe the shoulders, notice that, and soften away from the ears. Still, the tendency to scramble for security will try to reassert itself and gain some ground. We can't underestimate the very real and very fleeting comfort it provides. The meditation teacher Tara Brach, in her book Radical Acceptance, describes a practice she uses at such times. It's based on the Buddha's encounter with his nemesis Mara, a demon who kept appearing to tempt the Buddha to give up his spiritual resolve and go back to his old unaware ways. Psychologically, Mara represents the false promise of happiness and security offered by our habitual responses. So whenever Mara appeared, often with beautiful women or other temptations in tow, the Buddha would say, "I see you, Mara. I know you're a trickster. I know what you're trying to do." And then he'd invite his nemesis to sit down for tea. When we're tempted to go back to our old habitual ways of avoiding groundlessness, we can look at the temptation in the eye and say, "I see you, Mara," and then sit down with the fundamental ambiguity of being human without any judgment of right or wrong. One more sweet inhale here. And exhale here. Slide your elbows back, your hands back, and once again, press into the ground to roll up to sit. And gently move the things in front of you off to the side. Make your way up to hands and knees. And then come to lay all the way down onto your belly. Make a pillow for your head with your hands. Maybe rock the hips side to side. Shrug the shoulders. And feel the body settle here. Moving into a bit of a shoulder opener and possibly a twist, depending on how you practice it. Moving into starfish pose. So you're going to move over to the left side of wherever you're practicing. And you might find it useful to have a folded blanket or pillow here at the top left corner of your practice space. You could use a yoga block too. So you're going to reach your right arm out, but it's not forward, and it's not back by your hip, you're going to work to keep your hand shoulder height. And then your left hand pressed down, roll over onto that right shoulder. This is where you might want to put something underneath your head. So the hand stays shoulder height, the arm stays shoulder height. Lift your left knee up and step it behind you. You could also practice with your knees bent and one on top of the other. So you could have your knees bent and stacked. You could also have this top left knee bent up, the foot behind you, and the right leg could be kind of bent or long. See if you can roll over onto that outer right hip and open up the front of that right shoulder some more. As you're ready, inhale your left arm up, turn the palm to face behind you, bend your elbow, and you could rest that hand on your left thigh or hip. You could let it dangle down behind you or rest on the floor. If the breath flows easily, if the teeth don't clench, you could continue rolling backward and reach the left fingertips for the right. So you'd flip the right palm up for that. Interlacing the fingers, noticing if you brought that right arm down towards the hips, I think it's more useful to have the right arm stay directly out from the armpit than to have this connection. If you're gripping the fingers, let that soften. Notice if your chin is pointing forward and up, and if it is, soften it down. So from this side, it might look or feel more like this. So chest wide open, bottom leg relaxed, chin nestled in, breathing in and out. The more this top knee drifts behind you, the more of a bit of a twist you might get. You can even have both feet on the floor and knees off to the side. Starfish pose. Breathing in and breathing out. So noticing how sensation moves in the body. Maybe you feel a big amount of sensation in the front of the shoulder that's on the ground. If you feel a nervy or tingling sensation out to the wrist or the fingers, you might want to soften that sensation at the origination point, at the shoulder. So that might mean you don't lean so far back. It might mean that you put something underneath the shoulder. Finding the right amount of sensation where you can breathe in and out, where you can feel good about the stretch. Feel good about the stretch, which could feel uncomfortable. That's what this pausing and noticing your storyline is like. You feel good about the choice you make to be with the sensation that you don't like. In these times of quarantine, of separation from those who might help us feel good about ourselves, and perhaps quarantine with children, pets, spouses, family members that are challenging, so often because they reflect parts of us back to us, right? We have a saying in Craig's family, when a younger person does something, his dad will say, well, he gets that honest. Noticing a connection between the younger generation, something that they do, and someone else that we know. I love that that's a possibility to connect with how we are human. So sure, we learned that from grandma or grandpa or our mom or our dad. But it's also that this experience of liking and not liking, fear and comfort, is just the natural ambiguity of being human. But we choose to increase the volume, to turn up the temperature when we keep the storyline going, when we have to find a reason, a person to blame. Freedom from the suffering might happen more readily, more often, in small, tiny bits, when we drop the storyline of who or what we get this from or is responsible for it, and instead feel it. So feel the contact you're making with your mat, with the ground. Feel whether your teeth are touching and know that softening might be a way to relax. Feel how open the chest is to invite breath all the way up into the top of the lungs, and sigh. Moving out of this shape slowly. If the fingers are interlaced, release that. You'll lift your left arm up and put it down in front of your chest. Let both legs stretch out long behind you and roll off of that right shoulder. Make some movement in the shoulder. Let the head dangle and shake it no and yes. Or rest it on whatever was underneath the head. And then you move to the other side. So we move to one side of the mat so that the shoulder that you roll onto, the hip that you roll onto, stays padded on whatever surface you're practicing on today. So now it'll be left arm out, shoulder height, right hand behind you, rolling over onto the left shoulder, supporting the side of the head. You may gently bend the knees and have them stacked, so my hand is still in front of me while I figure this out. Or the top knee bends and lifts up. That invites that top hip to roll back. When you are ready, the hand reaches up, the arm extends, flip the palm to behind you can't see it anymore, and then bring the hand to the thigh or the hip. Relax the shoulder back. Let it dangle behind you, or roll back away. Toes relaxed, hands relaxed. One foot on the ground or knees bent, or both feet on the ground, knees bent. Relax the chin in towards the chest. Stay here and breathe in and breathe out. Pema goes on to say, in a book I recently read, the author talked about humans as transitional beings, beings who are neither fully caught nor fully free, but are in the process of awakening. She says, I find it helpful to think of myself this way. I'm in the process of becoming, in the process of evolving. I'm neither doomed nor completely free, but I'm creating my future with every word, every action, and every thought. I find myself in very dynamic situations with unimaginable potential. I have all the support I need to simply relax and be with the transitional, in-process quality of my life. I have all I need to engage in the process of awakening. Maybe that really speaks to you in this time. Maybe you think, I don't have everything I need to even take a deep breath. We each have to have our own experience. We have to notice when there are times that we can notice and change and do something. And we have to do our best in moments where we feel that we just need to keep going. The more we allow ourselves to feel, to sense, to say in words, to write in words what is happening within us, the more we connect with how in flux and in process everything is. And those moments we may notice that our teeth are tense and we can soften and breathe. We may notice, like in this shape, that the shoulder, the hip, the leg are on the ground. Can I soften and lean down there, which invites more opening in another area? We can notice why we're rushing to the next thing. We may be rushing to be done. As a child, I didn't like peas, so I would put as many of them as I could in my mouth and take a mouthful of milk and swallow them like they were pills. My mother was not impressed. To get away from it, to get away from the sweetness of the peas. There are times when you don't know why or what it is that you're getting away from. You know, you just have that feeling of getting away. The practice Pema invites us into is 90 seconds of being with it. And maybe we do it once in a while. Maybe we do it at other times. Take a long, slow breath in here. And exhale to sigh. If the back arm is behind you, lift it up. Plant that hand on the floor, extend both legs out. Roll off with the legs long onto your belly. Roll your shoulders up, back, and down. Maybe make some movement in the head or the hips. And then take yourself up into a tabletop position. From here, draw the right knee forward over to the side, extend the left leg long behind you, moving into a sleeping swan. You might want to take a blanket or a block underneath that right hip. Notice if the left leg is really far behind you, invite the left hip and the right hip to be level. You could bring blocks, you could bring pillows forward. Invite yourself to lean forward and down. Any amount of props that make sense to you here. Breathing in and breathing out. Feeling what you feel across that right hip here. Allowing the low back to be level. We don't like to think of ourselves as fixed and unchanging, but emotionally we're very invested in it. We simply don't want the frightening, uneasy discomfort of feeling groundless. But we don't have to close down when we feel groundless in any form. Instead, we can turn toward it and say, this is what freedom from fixed mind feels like. This is what unbiased, unfettered goodness feels like. Maybe I'll get curious and see if I can go beyond my resistance and experience the goodness. Buddhism holds that the true nature of the mind is as vast as the sky, and that thoughts and emotions are like clouds that, from our vantage point, obscure it. We're taught that if we want to experience the boundlessness of the sky, we need to get curious about the clouds. When we look deeply into the clouds, they fall apart. There's the expanse of sky. It never went anywhere. It's always been here, momentarily hidden from us by the fleeting, shifting clouds. And just a few more breaths in this sleeping swan. Maybe you soften the belly a little more. Maybe you relax the shoulders. Maybe you find that you need to add more props or soften them down so you can feel the process of sinking into, letting go into the support of the ground. And draw your elbows back, press your palms into the ground, roll your shoulders back. And shake the head no and yes. And gently make your way up to hands and knees. Take a moment to stretch the right leg behind you. Making any small movements you like there. The foot on the ground, the foot lifted. And then from hands and knees, draw the left knee forward over to the side. Bringing the floor up to you. So the stretch is one where the jaw can relax, where you can breathe. Notice if the right leg is really far back and you're falling over onto that left hip, you might need to bring the floor up to that left hip with a block or a book or a blanket, so that then this right hip can kind of wrap down and in. And as you're ready, invite yourself forward and down in any version of blocks and books or bolsters and pillows that invites you to soften across the low back. A big stretch across the front of the right hip, maybe a big stretch across the outer left hip. See if the hands can relax. Depending on how many pillows and blankets you bring to support you here, you might find that having the arms on top of blankets here or blocks helps you to soften the shoulders and the wrists more. Inviting yourself to have the experience, perhaps without commentary. If the commentary, if the exploration has you suffering because there's a judgment in it, sometimes it's really lovely to be curious about why or how. And sometimes it's too much. Because maybe those that said that they loved us and supported us were often very critical. So often critical of what they saw of themselves in us. There's nothing wrong with any sensation in the body. Every sensation is information. Is the body doing the very best it can with the shape or activity of the moment? If it's unwanted by you, perhaps that's a good exploration of why. Why do I need or want to feel differently in this body today? When we force the body to stay in a shape where the teeth are clenched and the breath isn't flowing, we are clenching and resisting change. That sensation is change. Sensation is change. It's a stretch, it's a release, it's a breath, an in or an out. So maybe we start with this exploration of 90 seconds with a tough feeling like anger or fear or jealousy. By having 90 seconds of a visceral experience, just having it, being human, lightening up on ourselves, relaxing any idea that how we cope with this moment is any reflection of our worthiness of love and respect and a glorious life. And just a few more breaths in this sleeping swan. And draw your elbows back, press your palms down, let the head be heavy as you lift up. Making your way back to hands and knees. You can sit over onto the left hip and draw the right knee forward. You can press up and draw the left leg behind you, extending it long, making any movement and stretch that feels good to that ankle, the calf. And then coming to sit so that you can create kind of a reclining frog position. So if you have blocks and a bolster in your practice space, you can put one block on the medium height and one block on the low height and place a bolster across it with a blanket or towel or pillow at the top. If you don't have yoga blocks with you, you could take a few pillows and start to make a decent platform. I like having a blanket up at the top because then you can both roll up as much as you need and have the edges of the blanket come around your shoulders. I'm just going to fold that back for now so you can see it. Have two other blankets rolled up into cylinders. And have these really close beside you. So you may find that pillows work really good for this, or couch cushions. If you don't have extra blankets, it can be bed blankets as well. Consider having another blanket nearby, or maybe a scarf or a towel. Sit back with your low back against this incline of pillows or bolster and blocks that you've created. Bring your blanket right up against your ankles and right up against your hips, so that when you lean back, you can have your legs open, but just a little bit. So this is where you might take some time to figure out what the right height of the blanket is behind you, and love having it come over the shoulders a little bit. So the idea is not to feel any stretch, but to feel like your head is leaning back onto softness, so your brain can actually be welcomed into the back of your head. Your jaw relaxes because your head is so held. So much of your torso is supported on the bolster or the blanket so that you feel just a gentle dripping out to the side, and then arms beside you. If you want, you could bring blocks or books or blankets underneath your elbows so that not holding, but gently placing the hands on the belly still has the shoulders being soft. And remember, your books or your blocks can go to any height. It may be lovely to wrap the feet even underneath. It might be nice to bring this blanket all the way over the top of you. Consider, if you have glasses on, taking them off for this shape, and then draping something soft over your forehead. It can cover your eyes. It could come all the way and wrap around your ears. It could drape over the top of your head. With the knees bent here, with the arms soft here. The connection of the arms and the legs to the torso relaxes. The tendons and ligaments that stretch out can soften. Breath may be invited to move deeper into the belly or the back body. In this reclining frog pose, imagine yourself being held by something warm and firm yet soft. So the perfect body temperature for you. The feet can move further out or closer in. The palms can be up or down. It can be very restless. We can encounter a feeling of restlessness in this kind of shape. If it feels too much like slamming on the brakes and too much spinning and swirling, you could tap the fingers to the thumb on one hand or in both, one at a time or a couple times each. Feel not just the eyelids softly closed, but the eyes invited to soften. All the muscles of seeing and talking receiving a precious break here. It can be easy for us when we are hearing yoga philosophy or Buddhist or Pema Chodron's writing to use it as an opportunity to add one more thing to the list of doing and must and should. These practices are offered absolutely for me as opportunities. We practice these shapes for many minutes at a time, but maybe throughout your day and your week, you practice them for 90 seconds. So I give you Mary Oliver's words to remind you. You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for hundreds of miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about your despair, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and the deep trees, the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese high in the blue air are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over again, to announce your place in the family of things. And this restorative shape could be an invitation to relax. It is different from sleeping. When we are asleep, our body is frozen so that we don't roll out of bed or sleepwalk. To come to a restorative shape and be awake and aware is a very special gift to you, to balance all the doing and planning and thinking and feeling with an opportunity to float differently. Restorative shapes are a choice we make to bring the supports in close to the body, softly cover or pad up, so that we can have this experience of our fundamental ambiguity, of being in process, of experiencing physical feeling, being aware of thoughts and emotional feelings. It can be a welcome relief. It can be a sad moment to feel. And be gentle with yourself. as you relax or as you struggle with relaxing, as you receive exactly what you wanted from this shape, or as you find yourself still wanting something different, less or more. Allow yourself to feel your experience. Stay just as you are. Lengthen the legs if that becomes the right thing to do. And if you'd like to explore a full 4 pattern square breath, you can go there on your own with your own count of breath. Or maybe it would be useful for me to count you through 1 round and then you launch into 3 more. So if you choose, let this inhale and exhale be gentle and normal. And then inhale for 1, 2, 3, 4, pause, 2, 3, 4, exhale, 2, 3, 4, and pause, 2, 3, 4. This would be your second round. Beginning your third. And 1 final round. And then release. Let it go. If your knees are out to the side, start to draw them up so the feet are on the ground. With your elbows able to press down into the ground, shift your hips to the left and invite yourself to lean onto your right side on whatever platform you created for yourself, with your blankets or your blocks or your bolsters or your pillows. And then invite yourself to come all the way down onto your right side. You can scoot down away from whatever platform you've created or roll over onto the side, away from the blankets, the bolsters, the blocks, the pillows. And then I invite you to lift yourself up and up. Take whatever was under your head, hopefully some version of a blanket or a pillow. Bring that onto your lap and see about moving everything else gently off to the side. Taking your time, no rush. And then you'll place that blanket or pillow so that you can still have a little nest for your head. And then come to lay down for your Shavasana. You could have one of these rolls underneath the back of your thighs. You could also open up these rolls of blankets and make them into a larger roll. Your legs can be long out from your hips. You might find that you'd rather have the knees out to the side. And then with the hands beside you, I think it's nice to have a blanket over the top of the body for Shavasana, but depending on your body temperature and what is available to you, maybe it's not. You might even take a moment to wrap your feet up gently. Snuggle up with the arms behind you, release down. Blanket gently over the tips of your shoulders. If you like the head up higher, the edge of the blanket away from you could lift up so the chin is tucked down. You decide whether to cover up completely, to have the palms face up or face down, under or on top of your blanket. And draw a long, slow breath in through your nose. Open your mouth to sigh. And that finger tap to the thumb can be something that you use in Shavasana if you feel restless. Notice your feelings and thoughts about the end of the practice. Have the thought or the feeling for 90 seconds and return to the information from your body. Feel the ground underneath you. Let it welcome you, softening down and relaxing. Relaxing with the tension, the pain. Relaxing with the sweetness and ease. Relaxing whatever it is there that you find today. Relaxing in this moment of your experience of being human. Be fully present. Feel your heart. And engage the next moment without an agenda. To the best of your ability, right here and right now. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. May all beings everywhere be happy and free. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Begin to deepen your breath. Maybe that happens slowly and gradually with the hands on the belly. Maybe you'd rather take a big inhale and exhale. Maybe you'd like to stretch. Eventually gather your knees into your chest. Roll over onto your right side. Give yourself a hug. Thank yourself for practicing today. And as you're ready, press into your hands, roll over onto your side, and come up to sit. Coming into any gentle seat you like with the legs long and knees bent. When you arrive, lift your heart and bow your head. Bring your hands together in front of your heart. Thank yourself for coming to your mat. Thank yourself for leaning into this fundamental ambiguity of being human. Were it not so challenging, people would not have built nunneries and monasteries and ashrams to explore this. So be gentle with yourself as you move through any of these practices on your own. Let's close today's class by joining our voices to chant together the sound of Om and 3 Shantis. You are welcome to unmute yourself or stay muted, as is your desire. Shoulders soft, ground holding you. Let's inhale together. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Lift your face, bring your thumbs to the space between your eyebrows. Trust your intuition. Bow forward to you, seal in your practice. Loka samasta sukhi no bhavantu. May all beings everywhere, you and me included, be happy and free. Namaste.